This first one from Tech Hippie. With Sea of Thieves, we have another MGS title on PlayStation 5 showing superior shadow quality versus Series X. Could there be some minor hardware difference which explains why PS5 versus Series X shadow quality differences are a recurring thing? Surely it can't be a bug or an oversight at this point. And this question from Shilon Xiao. Hello everyone! Exclamation point. Interesting the case of Sea of Thieves, huh? In times where most games are nearly identical on PS5 and Series X, Sea of Thieves shows some interesting differences between those platforms. Would it just be a matter of quote unquote pending further optimizations that would flatten them out? That would flatten out those differences? Or are we seeing an example of the developer trying to squeeze the best out of each console design? Now, Tom, you just spent a lot of time looking at Grounded on various consoles, where the narrative kind of shifted a bit in that, well, to sort of cut a long story short, the Xbox version was actually better overall than the PlayStation version. But even so, there were weird differences in there that kind of didn't make sense, and I don't understand why they were in there in the first place. Like, why are there like better LODs on PlayStation 5?
Right, and this has parallels with Sea of Thieves, which also had LOD improvements on PS5, as with Grounded, and shadows were sharper on PS5. And I guess Oliver, who did Sea of Thieves, I did Grounded. We both believe that it's a filtering issue. I think that's the most likely theory, with the same base shadow resolution on the actual shadows. So it's really the presentation of shadows at angles and at different ranges that are affected. Very strange situation with Grounded, though, because through all the, what you'd say are improved LODs and other settings, it actually ran at a lower frame rate on PS5, which to me...
And resolution.
Yeah, the resolution.
And resolution.
Too,
oh, yes. I completely forgot. Yeah, 1200p or 1215p max against 4K, which is, it's a slam dunk for Series X there. It was so strange that I had to go back and recheck, and it just kept coming up with the same results. So you say what you see in those situations, and that's what we see. With the word optimization, I would say... It is clear that they didn't optimize PS5 to nearly the same extent. And it's a strange trend, though, because these are all Unreal Engine games. We saw it in Hi-Fi Rush as well with the shadows. So for the shadow situation specifically, I'm inclined to say it's the way Unreal Engine plugs into the API that Sony uses for the PlayStation 5. That something just automatically generates from that to put the shadow filtering higher or the shadow setting higher. I think it's an oversight just by neglecting to see that the setting is just not been changed to match Series X. Mm-hmm. With LODs, this is, again, we've seen it on Sea of Thieves and Grounded. It could again just be the way the engine interacts with the API, and the developer just doesn't realize it.
I don't know.
It's strange. It's very strange, though, because if you're optimizing the game, then you would have seen the frame rate in Grounded. Mm-hmm. That it's constantly wavering between 45 and 60, mostly 60, but it's still quite a lot, well into the 50s. And no developer putting out a new port will be unaware of the fact, just seeing the metrics that they've got. So I wouldn't have said that it's an optimization push in any stretch for PS5. It's an oversight.
I've been trying to think why this is happening. There shouldn't be a scenario where an Xbox studio is putting out versions of an Xbox game for PlayStation that are superior in any way. Because, ultimately it's not in line with the brand, which you pointed out in your video. If you're selling what you're marketing as the most powerful console on the market, the concept that you're putting out a PlayStation version that has any advantages at all over Xbox is baffling to me. And I guess, possibly with the shadow thing, it's an Unreal Engine thing. It might be, as you say, some sort of interaction with an API that's different. But do we see that on other Unreal Engine games?
I don't know.
Not,
But it's
not entirely sure.
It's been 3 developers in a row: Tango Gameworks, Obsidian, and Rare, all having this. So it leads me to believe that there's something beyond those 3 developers.
The LOD thing, maybe it's a sort of Unreal Engine classification thing on LOD, but it doesn't make sense to me because it just doesn't seem to happen in other games.
I personally think, with regards to LOD, I do think the shadow filtering difference, which is minute, I think that is perhaps just like the PS5 has in its scalability settings default per Unreal Engine has probably a different setting for you can change shadow filtering in Unreal Engine 5 and 4 with commands. And it could literally just be a different default. Another thing that I think is actually like with regards to the LOD, and it may be actually applying to the shadow filtering as well too, is that the original scalability settings that the Xbox Series X version is using for a lot of these late ports to PS5 is based upon Xbox One. And as they upgrade to PS5 for this current release of the game, they're explicitly going in and they're saying, well, we don't want to have Xbox One level settings. We want to have higher settings. This is a next gen console, current gen console. And they tweak them, but then they don't go back to the Xbox Series X version to bring that up in line with what it could always have potentially done. I don't know. Don't attribute to malice what could be incompetence, maybe.
Yeah.
Neither is a particularly good.
No, neither are good. But I do think a lot of this is oversight and some incompetence somewhere in this large chain.
There is an Occam's razor situation to all of this, which is that the most likely explanation is probably the right explanation. And it is likely the fact that these games are being developed later on than the Xbox versions. So, there's a different set of, perhaps even a different set of eyes doing these
completely different, probably.
Very true. Yeah. Very true.
And, there's no real need to update the existing Xbox version, which has been sitting, in the case of Sea of Thieves, been sitting there, with enhancements, I guess, over the years for the last 6 years. I'm not sure the tech has actually improved that much since launch.
No.
So maybe it is some sort of overhang from Xbox One. The Shadows thing, I think, is likely something different because, the likes of Hi-Fi Rush didn't appear on Xbox One.
Right.
That's true.
But there is certainly some oddness there. And I do think that I'm just asking that these Xbox studios are just a little bit more careful. There is the argument, of course, that nobody would have noticed this stuff if we hadn't highlighted it. But which has been brought up on Twitter by more than one person.
True.
But ultimately, it still doesn't sort of make sense with the concept that Xbox is the best place to play Xbox games. I mean, that's basically it, right? There shouldn't
with Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves, you might conceivably not notice the visual differences, and you could be happily playing in blissful ignorance on Series X and just assume you've got the same experience. But with Grounded, it's such a different experience.